Hello and welcome to NewsHour. It's coming to you live from the BBC World Service studios in central London. I'm Tim Franks. We'll begin in The Hague with the chief prosecutor at the International Criminal Court saying that she's opened a formal examination of possible war crimes in the Palestinian territories. Fatou Bensouda says her investigation will cover events in the Israeli-occupied areas of the West Bank, East Jerusalem and the Gaza Strip since 2014. Her announcement follows what she says is 5 years of preliminary inquiries and then last month the ICC's own judgment that it could exercise its jurisdiction over the territories. The move has been denounced by the Israeli government as deeply unfair and disproportionate. The Palestinian authorities, in the shape of the two factions in charge separately of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, have welcomed the prosecutor's decision. Victor Katan is from the School of Law at Nottingham University here in the United Kingdom.
The investigation will look at all cases of war crimes and crimes against humanity committed by either Israel's armed forces or Palestinian armed groups, which would include Hamas, Islamic Jihad and others. It could also potentially include Israeli politicians or senior civil servants that are involved in settlement activity. And the scope of the investigation will look at crimes committed from the 13th of June 2014 and any future crimes.
Fatou Bensouda steps down from her position in June. Another chief prosecutor will take over. Is there any guarantee that he will continue this investigation?
The new prosecutor is a British barrister, Karim Khan, QC. She's opened it, she's leaving, and this lands on his lap. I can't see any reason why, unless nobody's cooperating and it becomes impossible to do the investigation.
Given that Israel is not a member of the International Criminal Court and it has denounced this, and there's been pretty widespread denunciation, even if there were a change of government in Israel, it's unlikely that that attitude to this inquiry would change. How can the prosecutor really investigate? Because presumably, I mean, it's not just about getting access to witnesses, it's actually getting access to the places where alleged crimes are supposed to have taken place.
It's going to be a big challenge for the next prosecutor. He's going to have to establish good relations with all the parties, despite the fact that Israel will not cooperate. He'll still need to try to establish relations with them. And of course, with the Palestinian Authority and also with Hamas, who control the territory where most of the crimes took place, namely in Gaza. I mean, they're actually, ironically, the key players in all of this, because without their cooperation, nothing's going to really proceed. One could envisage possibly if Egypt cooperated, they're not members of the court, but if they were to allow a team of investigators to travel through the Rafah crossing between Egypt and the Gaza Strip, it might be possible there then for investigators to enter the territory. But of course, there'll be no cooperation from Israel, which is not a party to the statute and is therefore not obliged to cooperate with the court. And this is why cooperation from third states that are parties to the International Criminal Court is absolutely crucial. If these countries have obtained information or evidence, or if Israeli citizens are traveling through or to these countries, there may be questions that the prosecutor would like to ask them, and they would be obliged, in the event of arrest warrants being issued, to cooperate with the prosecutor.
I mean, we've heard a denunciation from Israel, and we've heard a broad welcome from the Palestinians, including Hamas. If it came to the point where the ICC chief prosecutor was asking some really tough questions of Hamas officials, even, handing out indictments, at what point do you think that cooperation or that support for the inquiry is likely to fade away?
Well, I think it would be in the interests of Hamas to cooperate with the court, because ultimately, although there will be difficult questions and they will come under scrutiny for a number of incidents, whether it's rocket fire or the execution of collaborators, by far the most significant crimes were committed by Israel's armed forces. And then there's the issue of settlements, which it's going to be very interesting to see how the prosecutor deals with that. Israel's never investigated any of its officials for the issue of settlements, which is actually a war crime under the Rome Statute. So they may take a decision with Fatah, with the PLO leaders, that it's worth cooperating in the long run.